Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Philippine Geographical Society Lecture Series. This is, I believe, our ninth, no, sorry, geography webinar. I'm so sorry. This is the first geography webinar we have for this academic year, 2022-2023. And before we proceed, just a few reminders before that. To avoid the unnecessary background noise, kindly keep your microphones on mute during the presentation. We encourage you to interact by using the reactions button, or you can also type your comments and questions in the chat box. We will address them during the open forum. This lecture is being simultaneously streamed in the UP Department of Geography YouTube channel. Also, please note that this thing is being recorded. The recording of this webinar will be posted in the Department of Geography YouTube channel later. Before I introduce our speaker for this webinar, let me share with you the word cloud we have generated for you from your registration keywords. As you can see, dominant words include a future. Also, there's a smattering of technology, complex, advanced, robotics, data-driven, innovation, among others. We will find out later if indeed these keywords will form part of this afternoon's lecture. Let me introduce to you our speaker. Peter C. is an associate professor at the Department of Philosophy, UP Diliman. He chairs the Privacy Experts Group, the eHealth Department of Health, and the Department DOST and DOH. He's also a consultant of the development of a national AI governance framework, as well as doing other consultancy work with the National Ethics Committee as well. He also is a member of the Philippine Health Research Ethics Board Committee on Information Dissemination, Training, and Advocacy, or SIDA. And he also chairs the Ad hoc Committee on Open Data and UP Diliman. In the past, he has been a project director of the Ethical, Legal, Social Issues program of the Philippine Genome Center, as well as a previous director of the Diliman Interactive Learning Center of UP Diliman. He served as executive officer in the International Association of Bioethics and has been a research consultant for the public assessment of water resources, National Engineering Center, and as well as a research fellow at the UP Center for Integrative Studies. He has been a recipient of several international publications awards from UP, a referee of various journals, as well as a research fellow in ethical issues in international research at the School of Public Health at Harvard University. I also have the occasion to work with Peter in the last few years involving Ateneo de Manila University, UP Diliman, public schools in Pangasinan, as well as the DOH and the Provincial Health Office in Pangasinan for access to healthcare through digitalization. Right now, he's currently working on AI ethics and governance, data privacy, open data, research ethics, digital humanities, epistemology of social media, ethical issues in genomics, ethical issues in medical tourism, culture of compliance in healthcare, forensic ethics, and social certification, the Philippines, among many others. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you our speaker, Associate Professor Peter C. to give a talk, GeoAI and Governance. Let's give him
Magandang
a warm
hapon.
welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Sir Joseph. Thank you all colleagues for having me this afternoon. So let me get right to it. I'm kind of anxious that I might have overstated my abstract. And so part of my goal today is to get to at least 70% of the objective for the session. So you can say at the end of the webinar that you've spent your afternoon listening to an almost truthful presentation Before I proceed on to the topic, GeoAI and governance, let me just give a shout out to our research assistants, Therese, Rika, Joseph, Rowana, Nika, and Carl for the graphic illustrations. These days, without this staff, I'm practically useless. So I'm more of a bourgeois do-gooder these days, performing the materials in the project. So in any case, here we go. How I got from here, Sir Joseph mentioned my involvement in the public assessment of water services. What we did there is to measure people's assessment of water services in terms of water quality, network quality, customer service. And the thing that we're proud of is the geolocation of our respondents. I suggest that if you have opportunity to, for the researchers anyway, among the on this call, I suggest that you also apply geolocation for your respondents because it helps maintain data quality. We also installed geolocated telemetry for the water pressure, and I was very much interested in elevation as a variable of interest. Recently, I still have a gig with the Department of Trade and Industry as consultant for AI governance framework. And what I do for this kind of gig is to talk to academia, big tech, industry, government, civil society. So it's an interesting job talking to people, asking them about what they think about AI and should be governed, the kind of guardrails you have to put in. So I get paid to talk. So I suppose that this is in part an extension of that gig. So I'll be talking to you. Obviously, I'm not a geographer, so I'll probably listen to you more than talk. So as you can see in this kind of initiative, there's going to be a rollout of ethics first principle-based risk-driven data governance, and we'll talk about that a bit in a bit now. And then I also got a prior gig. We just recently completed a project in privacy and research funded by the UST. By the way, I have included the URL. I suggest that you multitask. You check out aiph.org/devframe, and the second one, privacyph.org, because we have there the primer and toolkit for research. So again, partly talking to academics and researchers. So that really bodes well with AI because privacy is a serious concern. And then, of course, my long time running gig with the e-health initiative of the country, with UST and the ICT and the DOH and the privacy experts groups. We're looking at geolocation as part of health information, and you're also looking at population health now. So that's a brief account of what I got talking about GeoAI, but that's probably mostly hubris because I attribute to my coming here to just being friends with geography people. So it's a little bit of an overstatement. So let's get to some of the basics, like what is AI? So any system that simulates human traits regarding reasoning, problem solving, decision making would be AI. And this is touted to be a major initiative coming. It's a wave. You probably have heard of the term fourth industrial revolution. It's going to inaugurate a lot of industries, and this is a buzzword in academia. They do AI, but just note that coming from a discipline that cultivates serious skepticism about just about anything, I would say that I'm a little bit embarrassed when I see a circular definition coming. In any case, geography is very much in the heat, in the middle of this initiative, and I'll show you how. So please check out the frame. The development of the frame. You can contribute still, and probably we need more input from geographers in the development of our national AI framework, because there's going to be an onslaught of this talk about AI, and resources will be diverted towards that. And this does not guarantee actually that the society will be better off. Your participation can probably help making sure that it's going to benefit our countrymen where it's most needed. No, so there are no guarantees in life, even in AI. So please participate. No, so with respect to GeoAI, I already shown you how my limited involvement in GIS is a valued experience. But these days, so much more is expected of GIS. It's no longer just, we have uh, the GIS system that you have probably in your department. When you come in contact with industry, with local government, with other civil society groups, they're probably expecting more from you. They'll looking. I would look at geography as a science of where, and where this and that, and it's going to be faster now. So, and that's going to be posing a serious problem in our capacities if we're still doing GIS the old way. So we have to do GIS via machine learning and deep learning, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Now, these are buzzwords. I'm not necessarily, fans of these buzzwords, but then the challenge of talking to industries that you have to really use their language so that they will even before you could even be accommodated. So that's part of the situation. So all sorts of traditional functions of GIS, except that it's going to be done now, and it's going to be used more and more for predictions, and we'll see that in a bit. So this is transdisciplinary. The geographers will be needing the big data people, the coders, and possibly bourgeois do-gooders like me to really carry out tasks that's going to be perceived as useful, remotely useful in the field or in society. So we are to enable large-scale data analytics. There's going to be some automation, and GeoAI is touted as high accuracy analysis and prediction as opposed to the older ones, the more traditional GIS endeavors, or projects. It's also highly sensitive to subtle changes, and hopefully the machines can enable us to do more. Machines do not get tired. I've been involved in a project with a whole section of GIS people, and I was wondering whether they really needed all this time, because they would spend 8 hours during daytime, and then they will do overtime at night and then during weekends, and it's so much labor intensive work. So labor intensive initiatives. And there's also supposedly better tolerance to noise in the older GIS system, GIS projects. You will spend a lot of time cleaning your data because you don't want your the noise, the unclean data, so to speak, to pollute your, for instance, visualization, analysis, and so on. And there's also going to be to dovetail with rapid technological advancements. And for those of you who are remotely interested, probably I encourage you to be Googling now, fact check me, because there's all sorts of technological developments that can be latched, that GeoAI can latch on. We're talking about some libraries elsewhere. Big tech will be sharing, or at least will ask you, or will provide you with APIs for you to use, so that you can roll out fast and quick and efficiently rather. So let me show you a big picture. You see probably, pardon I just realized there's some misspellings there and wrong grammar, but ignore that for a moment. So you have some correspondence, parallelism between artificial intelligence being a huge area, like the universe of discourse, and geography, what you guys do. And then on the next level is really the way you will be parsing data these days. Now, because there's enormous amount of data being collected, being generated by users, by ordinary folks, and the challenge is to put them together, and you need some tools to be able to do that. And this is where machine learning would come in, because it's hard to just be doing the regression you would want the machine to be doing regression on its own and try to discover to generate rules as it moves along. No, pairing that would be, of course, geospatial big data, Facebook, your phone, your all sorts of your phone, especially because it's gonna take records of where you've been. So these things can help in terms of, for instance, mobility analysis, land use, traffic, and so on. But then there's a subset. Now, machine learning is a subset of AI. Even more specialized is deep learning, and here we wish that from big data, you'll be able to mimic how brains work. That's why you have the neural network deployment, network analysis. That is also where you will be needing most the proper deployment of spatial principles, because without that, deep learning might be lost. No, so you need the guidance of professionals to somehow at least initiate the deep learning that GeoAI has to pursue. No, so all these things, the idea, and let me just highlight a few here, that what we learn from particular geography, from location, from the modeling we do, for instance, in Metro Manila, hopefully would be transferable. This is a kind of abstraction that you will have to do, and could be useful in some other analysis. You have to have some theories. I'm not a geographer. This is your wheelhouse. But then all the more you need to be invoking this and test this against how machines behave. No, as I already mentioned, that this is an area that you probably would need to be doing more collaboration, more help from other disciplines. And I've since the 1990s, I'm so used to working with other disciplines, but that sometimes I get confused for being an engineer or being a comsci, comsci student or teacher. In some areas of some collaborative work I do, I get confused as a medical doctor. So they don't necessarily know that I'm from the Department of Philosophy. So let me share with you a quick video. But you're seeing this.
Artificial intelligence is a broad term that describes the ability of a machine to learn a task or workflow. So geospatial AI, or GeoAI, simply refines the scope of that learning to spatially oriented tasks. Machine learning and data mining, aided by high-powered computing, form the foundation of GeoAI. Here, geospatial science also offers the tools and technology, including sensors capturing location data to GIS or location intelligence systems that help experts to visualize, understand, and analyze real-world phenomena according to particular locations. GeoAI is increasingly being used to model and capture the environment around us, linking locations where we live and work, or people and elements we interact with. The technology has particularly come handy in COVID-19 response and in mitigation efforts. It can help us explore potential role of real-time location and elements we are exposed to in that location in influencing health outcomes. There is also extensive research into GeoAI being used for hypothesis generation, conducting new data linkages, and predicting disease occur no stay-at-home orders. What if we open restaurants? What if we open public transportation? This facilitates the evaluation of potential policy decisions. There are broadly three key areas of focus for geospatial AI which surround the concepts of classification, clustering, and prediction. Classification is about detecting objects or changes in an environment. Clustering is about analytical models to find statistical patterns in data, such as COVID hotspots. Prediction allows analysts to build forecast scenarios on what may happen next. However, many such models currently in use do not generalize well across large geographic areas, since they depend on uniformity, on the assumption of variables such as health factors, population density, and mobility.
Okay, so there are emerging business cases, and I will not discuss each one of them, but for brevity's sake, I will say that you can very much use this for risk management. You can look at this in terms of traffic management, predictions, of course, of asset allocation, where you want to deploy, say, or preposition relief goods, in times of disaster, or prediction of incoming disaster. So this is the ArcGIS work that you probably are doing: classification, regression, clustering, and anomaly detection. What is emergent is really the use of GIS for deep learning, for genetic algorithm. And one special case for genetic algorithm is to look at solutions and how they can be married to produce even better solutions. Hidden Markov model would be referring to predictions of state of events. Now, for instance, there are based on data. For instance, I would know with greater accuracy where you might be tonight in space. No, and 94% of the time, most people would be staying in their homes. No, however, you state that you are wanderlust in your social media postings, that you are an adventurous person. For most part, people are boring. No, they are creatures of habit. There's one telco data, for instance, that shows that we hardly move beyond 100-mile radius, no, for most part of our life. Maybe when you're young, you move a lot, but then for most part in your lifespan, we are all boring, in that regard. So Markov models would help us understand where might need the next big thing event in space, the next fire, the next incident, for instance, for car accidents and so on. So increasingly GIS being relied upon to be able to do that kind of modeling. So my work has to do with governance framework. Obviously, I'm not a GIS person or a geographer, so I'll be sticking with my area of work, and that is something to do with governance. So you would want AI to be driven by principles, including inclusive growth, sustainable development, well-being, all the way up to trust. And I will discuss this by these items in a bit. So, for instance, inclusive growth and sustainable development, there are initiatives that really are aimed at a colleague of mine, Mahar, is working in NOAA. There's uneven results, uneven reception of this project, but then the motivation in a way is for everyone, and it's supposed to sustain national development. So you cannot sustain development when Filipinos or people are dead. No, so the idea that even AI is really meant for national growth and development. No, you're also going to make AI as human-centric as possible, especially being fair in regard to its development. No, so for instance, you are looking at local validation of global data sets. You would want this to be aligned with your work. You would want people to be front and center. In this case, for instance, in work in Mali in solid waste accumulation. They are training youth to validate otherwise foreign data. There's also an opportunity for them to work remotely, looking at geospatial data by combining local knowledge, and then leveraging on local devices, like phones. So, and this is especially in this case, in this particular study or intervention, you have vulnerable populations being given the opportunity to build the skills related to geolocation or geography. Now, you also would want to be promoting robustness, security, and safety in AI. And part of that is really about being able to balance the need for an accurate, usable geospatial data or information with the security and privacy of people. Some initiatives like blurring of private individuals' faces in a way on the street map, and this is for it got better recently. But when this first came out, for instance, Google Maps, you see complaints of people that their privacy has been invaded as a result of the initiative. No, so safety is important. For instance, for AI systems like self-driving cars, and there is already a telltale sign that this technology will be challenged by problems. Now, for instance, in one study, it found out that darker skinned pedestrians are hard to detect, so that it's well conceivable that a Tesla or a self-driving car could hit pedestrian simply because they're not recognized. So there's a bias. Now, so you would want this to be safe, to remove the bias, to secure people's privacy, and the system to be robust so that it doesn't conk out in the middle of the road, for instance. No, accountability for the programs and also for the AI algorithms. No, it's not in this slide, but the idea is to make AI accountable, as opposed to people would say, "Oh, it wasn't my fault. I simply programmed the AI." Or it was the AI algorithm was vetted and it was approved by regulators. Now it's wreaking havoc. No one is responsible. So you have diffused responsibility. So you would want accountability to be front and center as well. No, we also would want transparency in AI systems, data, for instance, and algorithms. And when it has to parse, when an AI system has to parse, usually at least thousands of data points, you would want to have at least a semblance of how it could possibly have come to a particular conclusion. No, you can also use AI to increase transparency. For instance, in some other activities on in certain locations, for instance, you can map mining sites, detect illegal mining, and see how land and water are actually being used, so that you can probably, for instance, map opportunities for restoration. You need transparency and explainability in how AI could be driving decision making and early warning systems. So if you've been following, for instance, the Ukraine-Russia war, there is a fire detection AI by NASA that is actually used by both parties, no, to confirm their bombardments. No, and even so you can use that to support otherwise cruel acts, or you can use that to audit, for instance, war crimes. No, right now. No, so there are more examples beyond what we could show today. Now, and finally, trust. There is a misunderstanding out there that claim you increase transparency, you create trust. That's just a minor part of the equation, so to speak, because we see an increasing trend in transparency in governments all over the world. Yet the citizens do not necessarily trust. No, so trust is something else. It's an independent value in its own, so that you would want AI to be trusted, because many of the things that AI programmers, AI implementers do are beyond the capacity of lay people, even much more experts, to understand. So you're talking about thousands of data points. So you'd say, "Oh, it's transparent. Can you give me the code, or can you give me the data points?" And then you're given this really thick printout of the algorithms and the data points, and you will not even be able to understand. So the AI researchers would like to have some kind of a leeway, and somehow, when they're not being destructive, that they are to be trusted. So that also comes with some kind of demonstration of at least the AI people not unwarrantedly sharing geospatial locations. And I will show you how later on. No? Making sure that what they do is in fact legitimate and declared purpose. And there's a process attendant to that. It's not just some AI research would say, oh, what I'm doing is legitimate, what I'm doing is proper, but as a matter of fact, it has to be trust that is embedded in a system or in a process of building trust. No, so we have examples already of researchers actually being trusted, or AI systems being trusted, but when in fact they are not to be trusted because they sell their data to data brokers, and that can potentially be dangerous to certain individuals. No, so you would want your governance to be governed by governance to be implemented by certain approach, and we're recommending a risk-based governance. And this in my conversations with the different sectors of Philippine society, representations anyway, they are advocating this is the dominant framework for governance, risk-based, because AI is fraught with risk, and GeoAI is no exceptions. No, so it's no exception. So when we speak of risk, we mean two things. And the misunderstanding about risk is that it's just the magnitude or the risk of you dying, but actually there is a probability component. So it's a multiplication of the harm, the magnitude of harm, and the probability of that harm happening. Essentially, what this formula is telling us that whenever you put people there, there's going to be risk. So a lot of disasters, I mean, if a natural event happens and there are no people, it's not going to be counted as disaster per se. No, so we have to understand that data are people until proven otherwise. You may have data on, say, ocean currents, and this is an experience close to home to this day, because today for me at least, because recently one of my colleagues lost his father at sea. No, he's a fisherman, and then you just have so much so large an area to search. So I suggested that they find out what the ocean currents during that day he was lost, or at least around that area. So at least you can narrow the search parameters, no, at least, or the directionality of the search. Until now, his father's not still found. So it's quite a tragedy. There's no closure. They're grieving until now. It's probably grieving for a very long time. So but then the Coast Guard would not give that data. No, again, as seemingly innocent data like ocean currents, it seems like there are no people there. But once you but as a matter of fact, it's really about people in the end. No? So all data are people until proven otherwise. So it's incumbent upon the researcher to prove that in fact there are no people there. So so you would want to look at risk. One of this would be bias leading to discrimination. No? So the discrimination could be as a result of poor data quality and uneven representation. So if you look at Twitter, for instance, some of you are on Twitter, some areas are overly represented by white people, relatively well off. For instance, looking at Twitter users in London, for instance. And if you use that as a regressor for certain events, the outcomes would certainly be biased. No? So and the interpretations of results would not be good. So let's have some more examples now of AI actually being biased. So on the left, you have community source demarcations. On the right is AI generated. As you can see, AI, despite its best training available, is at best going to be ignoring poor housing, or poor houses, especially in the ones in slums. No, so there is probably likely an algorithmic bias happening here. No, so because the smaller structures are not being detected. No, so you also need to have better explainability and transparency when it comes to the implementation of AI, because at least the implementation of AI in war, it can kill. And untested, you can only test so much, because but especially for tanks, because there's no such thing as, you know, testing people to be killed. No, you would really want to go to war to be able to see how your tank would fare. No, and that is a risky proposition. So you will be needing a good benchmark, a data set benchmark, to be able to test the safety of an autonomous tank, for instance, before it gets deployed. And that is just not available. So you're also having risk of unequal access to services, platforms, and data monopolies. You see, you are using Uber or you're using Grab, which is essentially a monopoly now in the Philippines. You probably are using also, say, Waze in your driving. These are data monopolies, and in reality, it has, in fact, it stifled innovation. So you would want to free up data because you don't want these big tech companies to leverage. And as you can see, let me share a little bit on this personal experience talking to this big tech. They're the more aggressive ones to say, oh, regulate us, or let's have some governance framework, because they are already, in a sense, secure in their position in society. They can leverage a lot of things to be able to quash competition. So the best way to release the value of data is to keep it open, and to at least mitigate against the hoarding of data by big tech. So there are more examples of how risk need to be managed in terms of, for instance, of failure of consent mechanisms. I understand that geography has been quite active as a department in our ethics committee in the college. You see that even more compelling are use cases in geography where consent is hard to come by. When you fly a drone, for instance, I'm not sure how exactly you're going to consent from people, especially when there's no licensing requirement, and even the Civil Aviation Authority would say, oh, respect the privacy of people. It's just not practical to roll out consent mechanism for GIS studies or geographic studies now involving drones, for instance. So some of those drones would be able to capture images with that could potentially violate privacy of people. It could possibly be used for spying, even for UP, where we have large, large communities of informal settlers. If you fly a drone, you are going to be suspect of spying. So it's hard to carry that out. Now, so aerial imagery is hard to come by with. Consent process is hard to come by. To have a good solid consent process when it comes to aerial imagery. So let me just share with you an example I have. Some time ago, I used to immerse in a informal settler community in Mola Street in Makati. Now it's being demolished. So about 1,000 families flanked by two private properties, large private properties, and so they were cramped in that particular area. You'll notice that these families, these households, actually do not have any restroom. So how do they defecate? They defecate by defecating in a plastic plastic container, and they will drop this up and just throw them up in the roofing, and nature will take care of the feces, drying them up and possibly washing them during rain time. So there's so much garbage on their roofs. Now, do you really want this to be seen in your drone surveys? No. So in this particular study, the people in Tanzania did not want the local leaders to know that, as a matter of fact, they're doing this way, even if the community already have some idea where they are defecating, because they don't have toilet. So is that unfortunate? But there's no more Mola Street informal settlers now, so I could no longer go back there and see after decades how else they're going to defecate. I'm not sure if they have applied AI in the way they will remove their they manage their feces. In any case, that's a serious problem running consent when it comes to aerial images. So we also have to understand that all research, especially geography department, involving or individuals and groups threatens their privacy. So if we let that sink in, we'll probably tread lightly when we do GeoAI research. And so some shortcuts we need to consider that all these layers would involve data identifiability. For instance, in the first layer, you have readily identifiable data. This is your more or less closer to raw data. This is your tabular data. The more you go higher up to the aggregate data, the less potential privacy invasion or privacy breach is going to happen. But then, as you know, aggregate data are terrible materials for granular analysis. Now, you can only do so much with aggregate data. And so you're going to be forced to deal with more readily identifiable data, provided you are able to technically at least de-identify them or provide some safeguards so as not to violate people's privacy. So that's the kind of risk you'll have to consider as well when you roll out GeoAI. So there's also the risk of excessive data retention. You see that big tech people are hoarding data. Probably there's still some lingering images that are potentially violative of people's privacy. So you would want to blur them. No? No meron. Malapit na ba time? So we have 46 now. Misinformation. You can look at GeoAI to identify hotspots or cold spots for misinformation, and so you can allow local authorities to address them, and so addressing COVID pandemic more effectively. If you can use AI for good, it's also possible to use AI for bad, for evil, and so there's all sorts of fake maps going out there, and so it makes people mistrust maps, and that is bad for the business of geography. Low accuracy is possible because of some labeling failures. I will skip this, and we can go back if we really need this. Data deficiencies as a source of accuracy, low accuracy. There is very low risk of geographers being replaced by AI, but nonetheless it's there, and it's probably a matter of range, matter of degree. When it comes to automation, AI could be building itself, could be correcting itself down the line. You can have a self-enhancing maps of the world of certain areas given AI, but hopefully we will still be needing professional geographers to really guide or to put GeoAI on solid grounds. So I cannot discuss everything, but please check out these websites if you wanna consider deploying AI in a good way, in a proper way, ethically sound GeoAI, and there are some toolkits that you can use to be able to do just that. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Peter. So many questions probably that we can all ask from his presentation. That was very insightful and a bit overwhelming with data. We will now proceed to the open forum. We encourage you to type in your question in the Zoom chat or in our social media accounts for those of you who are watching via YouTube. If you want to personally ask the question, just use the reaction button to raise your hand and we will acknowledge you. So, yep, if there are some questions from the audience. There's one. Peter, I'm just going to read this for you. I know you could see it too, but I'll just read it. So, how is the Philippines doing in terms of security as well as liability of AI? Is there a mechanism developed by the government for responsible use of data or spatial data?
As far as I know, none yet. That's why they are rushing to put together the AI governance framework, because out of that framework, they will develop laws. But I will caution against blanket laws. I've been noisy in telling people to provide sunset provisions, clauses in these laws, because I don't want, for instance, geographic data to be stifled, the release or the innovation that can come out of the use of geographic data to be stifled by too much regulation. So it's going to be a balancing act. So the short answer is none just yet, at least not explicitly, but then down the road, there's going to be more.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Peter, I was just curious about one thing that you mentioned earlier, but I don't quite know how to articulate this question, but I think it's something to do with if the geographers are gathering geospatial data, and you said there might be a low risk of AI overtaking them, but isn't that what AI is doing now? Processing the data is the processing of data gathered by humans actually go through AI.
Yeah, but I think that goes back to the question of what is a geographer. Because if you're talking about geographers who will just be operating the machine, and there's not much insight, there's not much application of geographic principles, and that's gonna be overtaken by AI, because AI will be self-learning, it will update itself, but geographers will be there supposedly to provide insight. There's this concept in AI called humans in the loop. You would want to insert humans in the middle of AI operations because you would want to provide oversight. And this is done well in financial world. If there's every time there's a financial market crash, and they see that the AI is just being too logical and not handling perception well, and they will just pull the plug and say, let's let the humans take over. So I think we need geographers that way, but the geographers will just I don't possibly, you are probably hesitant to call them geographers in the first place, because if they're just ArcGIS operator, it does not necessarily make them geographers. I hope I'm not mistaken.
Thank you, Peter. I think Kathy is raising her hand. Kathy, you may just use your microphone.
Hi, yes. I would like to check na naririnig niyo ako, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So my background is actually in GIS, and in one of the slides of Sir Peter, he mentioned about the process of the GeoAI, and there was a specific software there that was included in the slide in ArcGIS, or actually work in that particular field. So when the slide came up about geographers being overtaken by the AI, it was also something that's very interesting for me, because someone who's in the field of GIS, I've never actually felt that a GeoAI would overtake the actual human intelligence, because there's one department in the team that handles the data, and maybe that team may be overtaken by the GeoAI eventually, because the GeoAI would be faster in collecting and processing the data. But then there is a whole host of other roles within the GIS community, like the data analysts, the ones who actually prepare the maps, the ones that collaborate with each other to make the data collected by the GeoAI to be processed in a way that it becomes information, that it becomes knowledgeful, that better decisions can actually be made, and actions can be taken from that particular data gathered by the GeoAI. So that is just my 2 cent piece of why I think, as a geographer, I would not be, at this point at least, not be threatened by the growth of the GeoAI, but in fact welcome it, so that the processing of the data would be faster.
Yeah, yes, Kathy, I agree. That's why I said the risk is rather low. No, that data or that slide is actually a screen cap of professionals saying the probability of certain disciplines to be overtaken by AI in the next decade or so. So the probability is low. But I would say that still for those that are too focused on automation, on operation, that they move away from more manual routines to being able to provide more insights, being able to connect the dots, to interface what the machine says, and work with people, policymakers. And I think that's where the geographer shines. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter. There are some questions that were sent privately, so I'm just gonna read them. There's one question here asking, you mentioned that people's trust in AI is extremely important in making it work. How can we ensure that the masses will react positively to it, given recent issues with data management, such as various instances of people receiving messages from random numbers?
There are many things to unpack from that claim. The random messages coming from random numbers it's not necessarily AI. This is more deliberate effort on parts of certain telemarketers, probably scammers, to target you. And there are some data sets that have been stolen or shared inappropriately. So they have, for instance, especially for low postpaid people, you are favorite punching bag of favorite targets of scammers. No, yeah. So trust is necessary because it smoothens economic transaction. There's this work by Gary Becker, a Chicago economist, stating that trust is an oil of economic transaction. Say you mistrust your jowa, you keep on following him or her, you spend a lot of resources, time to surveil him or her because you mistrust her. That is a terrible relationship. So if the best relationship between the AI people, the AI programmers and the public and other stakeholders is that of trust. However, it's not a blind trust. There are mechanisms to be done to make this trust worthy of people to have. No, so it's going to be necessary. Yet it needs validation and periodic affirmation by the parties. I hope that helps.
Yes, Peter. There are a few more questions here, and I'm just gonna put this together. One of them is a lot of geospatial information that we have right now, that we have available out there for use, are out there. How do we evaluate or assess that the data available is accurate for use in AI? Or can AI be used to detect the quality of data being used?
I can think of a number of approaches, but one solid approach to do this is to check, especially if you're dealing with vast amounts of data. In the big data world, you're talking about say 100 terabytes of data. It's okay. Well, you can do community validation if you're talking only of, I mean, like hundreds, thousands of kilometers of space. But if you're talking about the Earth, it's impossible to do this manually or with human eyeballs. So what you can do is to really have a good benchmark data set to at least detect fraudulent maps, fraudulent maps, and then you can pit it against, compare it against with more reliable maps, because a fake map could potentially be detectable by AI as well. No, while AI can do fake, AI can also be used to detect fake.
That's good to know, especially in the era of disinformation. Of course, you mentioned this also a while back. Any other questions? Yes, Oni, please go ahead. Use the microphone, please.
Hi, Sir Peter. Good evening po. Yeah, my question is, siguro kasi yung development of AI is always associated with business interests, corporate money and business. So siguro if we could have, I don't know, an example in which AI is used in a more, paano ba, organic. I don't know if that's the right word, no? Pero mas organic yung development niya or mas nakatali siya sa interest ng community rather than looking at big patterns or well, of course, because you're dealing with, that's the advantage of AI, no? Di ba? Dealing more efficiently with big sets of data and getting, analyzing, getting patterns, no? Insights from those kinds of data. But would there be other initiatives less related with businesses, more with community and community-based, or yung ganong klaseng sigurong direction of AI? Would there be examples of that? So siguro parang ma-dissociate din natin kahit paano sa businesses or sa corporations yung AI at yung paggamit ng AI.
Yes po. Maybe just a quick plug. I'm putting together a group for people-centric digital transformation. It's highfalutin, but exactly your point, your concern, because AI is very much driven by big tech, by big business interests. They want you to click. They want to understand your psychographic so you can buy more. You can be more dependent on them. You have to get the latest iPhone, the latest Samsung, whatever. And that, I would say, probably impractical to prevent, if not impossible to point at this point. So we need to have activities that are more community-centric, and I agree with you. There are examples in my slides in Tanzania, where they would be managing community resources via some kind of AI. Small scale by definition, so it's not necessarily AI in the big tech sense that you need massive amounts of data. You can use that. No, there are other use cases, for instance, and probably this is going probably controversial, like Clearview. When you are a Russian conscript, you die in Ukraine. There's no way for you to be identified. And Clearview offered this to the Ukrainian army or Ukrainian volunteers to take your picture, and Clearview will identify who you are so that you can be returned to Russia. Well, that's for facial recognition. But for community resource management, I think AI can see patterns, because it can parse satellite data and just focus all the relevant information for your for instance ecosystem, for your catchment area, and it can be used to identify water, manage water deployment, other resources, and also planting, for instance, for the community, when to plant, given records on climate change, all these extrapolations. The GeoAI should be able to assist at least in you to be able to say which crops are best suited for that community at that given particular at a given time. I hope that helps.
So many new information there, Peter. Thank you. I do have one question later on, but I'm just going to ask this quick question from someone who asked, how about geospatial infrastructure interoperability in AI? Do we have that in the Philippines, or we still have a long way to go?
I think many of the tools now have migrated online. ArcGIS, for instance. I'm not sure if you are still using a standalone ArcGIS. Meron ba ditong gumagamit? Can I get a raised hand? Because the battle now, so to speak, in terms of advancement in the tools, I see ma'am, no? Ay papunta na talaga sa online, because you will be needing the API of big tech anyway. All those data analysis frameworks are online. So mahirapan ka na kung standalone. So as you can see, even your workflow has to be suited in a way that you are always online, or at least your data, you put in all these maps, for instance, or put it there, and then you put it in a particular storage. You bring in an API, for instance, to recognize patterns. or to protect privacy of people. For instance, you let the machine identify who are people. Yan, ito pala, ito si they're using API, yeah, especially for web maps. Yes, so I'm saying now that in terms of interoperability, there is so much pressure for geographers to really go online and do stuff online, so that you can leverage the power of other geographers and other systems, no? So in that case, you are forced to be interoperable. I see some of you are still doing social mapping, for instance. Naalala ko tuloy si JC, some of his exercises. Others still needed on a small scale, but if you want to leverage AI, it's got to be online. And you better have budget for geography department to have to be able to use this, because otherwise you'll be left out. No? The same way I tell other disciplines na hindi talaga maiwasan to make our applications cloud native and so on and so forth.
There's one more question, Peter. Actually, two more, but let me just ask the first one. Since this discussion is on GeoAI and governance, do we know a local government here in the country that is now using the GeoAI services to provide better governance?
Not yet, no. DOST, NOAA, they are the ones. For most part, they're the ones getting closer, bringing their work closer to provincial governments, no? May mga progressive na provincial governments that would lalapit kay Maha or lalapit sa DOST for help, but not so much in a systematic way. I've been advocating that the government should be walking the talk, that if they want to promote AI in this country, they have to require government LGUs to use AI. My PIV example, my favorite example, my favorite PIV is for the Quezon City government to use AI. It's just so messy for me. Like for instance, contacting departments, there should be at least a robot who will direct me to proper information. Getting the disability card for PWD card for my son was quite a horror. Because their online forms do not work. My Quezon City ID is still stuck somewhere. So I think for GeoAI to work, or AI for work for that matter, the government has to walk the talk. And that's going to translate to billions of pesos. I'm not talking about just the ID, but overall, deployment of resources, government resources to make this work, because you cannot do this half-heartedly. You cannot just do AI on a pilot basis. Magpa-pilot ako next week, next month, next year. It has, because by nature, AI has to deal with massive amounts of data. If there is no massive amount of data to work with, it's basically useless. No. Yeah. The next
There's
one.
one more question. Yeah, there's one more question here, Peter. It says, since the country is prone to disasters and quite slow in updating information, do you think that the Philippine government should invest in GeoAI and find existing options? I'm mixing up the questions. So it may find existing options too expensive to afford.
Expensive is relational to people who have money, to the agencies. Now, if we can spend, for our air pilot to escort what PAL 1 or Air Force 1, I think we can spend for AI. And it's not a single deal. There are going to be parallel initiatives. We've been agonizing over open data. There's not much effort to open satellite data, for instance, coming from our own satellites. No, yun ang problema. Some of our leaders are actually not open to open data principles, and that is something that we're struggling with. We have a meeting on Monday on open data, Sinamahar, some other engineering people and science people and law. Hopefully, we can make a dent, at least here in UP, to come up with an open data policy that can really be held as a mirror to the government. Bakit ayaw ng gobyerno mag-share ng data? kayo mismo, NAMRIA for instance, binibigyan ba kayo ng data or may easy access pa kayo? May easy access ba tayo sa satellite data? Mga ganong klase na dapat sana the geographer should have more data to work with, no? And AI can only succeed again if we have data, no? Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Peter. I wonder if Project NOAA is definitely advocating for open data, diba?
Yes, very much. So there is this open data principles, charter principles that is being followed by NOAA, and that's kind of the world standard for open data. Open data can do wonders, no? And with open data, we can have more innovation coming from geographers, from other disciplines, no? But we need so much data, no? And to be able to work with data, the tools, no?
I was remembering one professor whose talk I listened to, and I think she was working on some data that was privately collected. And then when someone asked her if it's possible to share that data, she did say something which was to me kind of persuasive, but in the light of open data, she was not very forthcoming. But she said something like, I can send you low resolution data only because we do have to pay to get this data that we have. So unfortunately, I cannot share the data that's high resolution with you. Low resolution, yes. So I don't know if you have any
that
comments
can
on
work. A certain resolution might be useful for you, but not for pattern recognition, that for patterns that are really fine grained. The national standard or the ASEAN standard, even world standard now, is 4K resolution for images at least. But that may not be practical and probably expensive, and that's why I can understand the hesitance of that person to say, oh, bibigyan kayo ng low res kasi binayaran namin to. But that's one model. The other model is to have some co-op maybe so that you can afford commercial data at least initially, and to gather your own data. Drone, for instance, is really LiDAR. We have a LiDAR that's, I think, underutilized, no, for the UST. It should be flying 24/7. Just kidding. And open the data to geographers and to other analysts, no. So while there is commercial data that is potentially expensive, more data can be generated in inexpensive ways.
Thank you, Peter. Are there any other questions for our speaker? Okay. Okay, yes, just one more question. Or actually two, but TJ, do you want to go ahead?
Hello, Sir Peter. Good evening. Okay, so just wanted to ask, because when I was with NOAA, there's this thing called Internet of Things. So and then parang NOAA is helping in terms of installing or capacitating local government units like Manila in installing IoTs in collecting data, for example, in traffic, in flood hazards, etc. Is there a difference between AI and IoT? And if there's a difference, if they're different in one another, is it possible for us to blend them together? Salamat po, sir.
Yeah, these are complementary technologies. Internet of Things is just about machines talking to each other. Aggregating data, putting in the analytical layer would be GeoAI. Putting in other factors, like for instance, temperature is not necessarily there. So even if machines talk to each other, there's probably another set of machines. For instance, we have sensors, for instance, flooding, right? But you probably would need, for instance, data coming from, say, Sierra Madre, and there are necessarily no things there. And so you can say, oh, we need satellite data on cloud formation in Sierra Madre, so that you can, because eventually it's gonna, it's gonna go to Marikina, and Quezon City's water goes to Manila. We know already the directionality of these things, no? So that even if we have Internet of Things in Manila, it's a very confined, restricted parameter. You would want, cloud formation in Sierra Madre. You would want water levels in Marikina. You would want other things, no? So, and that's where the geographers are needed the most, to put together otherwise disparate information sets or data sets.
I think we got one last question and also a comment from the same person. I wonder how AI can be used for analyzing patterns of human rights violations, say human trafficking, since it's important to analyze movement and interaction. However, data might be the main issue with such kinds of applications.
At least we can break this up into several ways. Now, one is the human rights, crimes against humanity. You already see how the graves in cities or in settlements outside Kharkiv. I forgot in Boka, for instance. You can look it up. Don't take my word for it. In Boka, how it was discovered. It was actually discovered using satellite image, the concentration, no? So one of the things, so we can detect, or we can at least allow AI to help detect crimes against humanity. Human traffickers are very sophisticated people. There are many documentaries of how, for instance, Romanian girls are trafficked in Germany. And part of it is voluntary, like Germans would go to Romania, make jowa out of Romanians, and when they return to Germany, they are pressured to do sex work in the streets. No? So that's hard to detect geography. But what you can do is look at patterns. So you can look at documentation of individual cases and abstract patterns. No, so that's not entirely impossible to do. No, so you're more like grounded approach to GeoAI as opposed to more satellite, more remote sensing type of approach. No, so this is going to be a complementation of human intelligence, so to speak, on the ground, and marry it with GeoAI later.
Peter, may isa na lang dito siguro last question. Pero ano po kaya ang pwedeng gawin para maging accessible ang AI in general sa karamihan? No? Kasi iba dito walang access sa internet, hindi alam ang konsepto ng internet. Baka may ma-offer ka na.
I hope you'll help me. It's a long shot, but I have put together some kind of manifesto on upclab.org.oer. We really want to reach out to the geographically isolated, disadvantaged areas in the Philippines. And I'm right now advising a robotics team in a middle of nowhere high school. So UP is so living in the bubble. So I really hope that you guys would go back to your communities. The more remote, the better. To really, mentor them, not necessarily directly to AI, but at least the mindset to be able to deal with technology, AI included, so that they can thrive in this era.
Thank you very much, Peter. Probably there might be other people who might be asking questions. So reach out to Peter through his email. If you have some questions related to this, I'm sure it will be, all your comments will be given its proper due, especially since Peter is coming up with documents to make it much more accessible to people, and also for us to clearly understand what this might be. Thank you very much, Peter. To show you our appreciation for the talk, we would like to give you a certificate of appreciation, which is presented to you, Peter C., for the valuable insights and expertise shared as a virtual resource speaker for the talk GeoAI and Governance for the Geography Webinar Colloquium Series given today, 29th of September 2022, signed by yours truly, Joseph Palis, and the coordinator for the Geography Webinar Colloquium Series, Dominic Sasha Amorsolo. At this point, we'll just proceed with the next set of announcements. We have a few more talks coming up until December. So just to give you a sense of what type of things are in store for you, we have a speaker on October 12 from UP Visayas. The title is yet to be given, Sani Fernandez. And then we also have one of our alumnus, LA Di Mailig, who's now based in Indonesia, who's going to give a talk on October 24. The title is still pretty much a work in progress, but that's what he was telling me about: geographic knowledge and perspective in humanitarian work, having been involved in Typhoon Yolanda and his work at the DSWD before he went to Indonesia. We also have a professor from the UP Department of History whose dissertation touches intersectionally on climate and disaster. This one is Understanding Tropical Manila, Climatic Studies of the Philippine Weather Bureau, 1900s to 1930s. And finally, for December, we have another professor from the UP Department of Anthropology, Botohano, Have Sticks Will Travel, Filipino Martial Arts and Mobilities. There's no question mark there. It's about our niece. December 5, that's a Monday at 5 p.m. And then we have so many things in store for you next year with several other talks. If you want to, you can watch the recording of this lecture as well as past sessions of the Philippine Geographical Society lecture series and geography webinar at the UP Department of Geography YouTube channel. And we have an international conference coming up in November 10 and 11 of this year. It will be remote and naturally virtual, speaking of AI, right? And our theme is in emotional geography. So please participate and send us your abstracts. The deadline is October 15, 2022, and then we'll let you know about the outcome of your abstract submission so that we could proceed with this. I'm pretty sure it might be interesting to look at AI also in relation to emotions, since Peter mentioned something about how human in the loop is always incorporated in much of this assemblage, especially when AI is becoming more logical. But I wonder, Peter, whether even AI can be taught how to feel. You know? I was just remembering this rather futuristic movie starring Joaquin Phoenix and the voice of Scarlett Johansson called Her, and how she as an AI was taught to feel things. No? So interesting story.
Yeah,
But anyway, yes, but so we got here 250 word abstract, 35 keywords, and just send it to our link. We have a link, tinyurl.com/ICGS2020 abstracts. Or you know what you can do? You can go to updgeography.blogspot.com or like us at Facebook, UP Department of Geography, and we have all the information there for you. We also have a Twitter and on IG account. So we're everywhere, just like how AI dictates things. Ano pa?